Okay, John, getting ready to start another MAC season, and you add a team and subtract a team, adding Massachusetts, and Temple's leaving. Just talk about where you see the Mid-American Conference headed.
We're coming off a couple of pretty good seasons. We're coming off a season where we were 4-1 bowl games, had a pretty good regular season. We're 7-3 in our last 10 bowl games. That's all great, but that's also all in the past, and so now we need to do it again, and those things need to be expectations and not the exception. I like what I see coming back. We've got a lot of good quarterbacks in this league, which probably means a lot of points going to be scored. Exciting games should make for great entertainment if you're there in person or if you're joining us on TV. At least I hope that's the case. And I really look at us to go out there and compete hard. Now, we'll find out in the first 3-4 weeks of the season.
I've heard a lot this day about stability within the conference and how you like that. Football programs are measured obviously on wins and losses, but that's not all that should be measured.
No, that is correct. And knock on wood here, we have been pretty stable as a league. Certainly our core has been very stable. The non-AQ BCS leagues, we're certainly been the most stable. Starts with good leadership, and I think it's because the component parts of our league make sense. We match philosophically, we match programmatically. Our budgets look an awful lot alike. Geographically, it's a really good fit. All of those things, and so then when you sit back and evaluate all other opportunities, you say, you know what, we're probably in the right place. Plus, we've shown our folks can be competitive at any level here. You want to compete for a national title, you can do that in an awful lot of sports right here in the Mid-American Conference. But you don't take that for granted. Leadership can change, details can change, and so it's my job. I'm always aware of that, and we work very hard to make sure we're building consensus within this organization.
And unfortunately, the Penn State saga has dominated the news for months now, and perhaps the only good thing that could come out of it is that it's a sort of a cautionary situation for programs throughout the country when it comes to college sports. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Well, probably the last 2+ years, we've talked a lot of things around football that had nothing to do with student athletes. And we've got to get back to being focused on the student athletes. The Penn State thing was a tragedy of epic proportions. And while it was unthinkable and unspeakable, we've got to do just that. We need to always think about it and always speak about it so that never, ever occurs on any of our watches. I mean, it's quite frankly, I'm angry over what occurred and that the fact that it was allowed to occur and it could have been stopped. So we got to make sure that doesn't happen again. The others, whether it's the situation that we had at Ohio State or at Miami, Florida, that they're dealing with, or an academic scandal somewhere, got to get beyond that. I hope we're doing things the right way in our conference. We're certainly trying to, but it's incumbent on all of us to take back the house. We got to get control of our organization. So I think a lot of that had to do with what Dr. Emmert with the NCAA did yesterday, is planting a flag and saying, it stops now. We're going to hold ourselves accountable, whether you agreed or not with the penalties. It was making a statement, and are we at a tipping point? I don't know, but the NCAA came into being in about 1906 because we were having deaths in football, the flying wedge and all of that. Brought a bunch of university presidents together. They formed an association, really get their hands around the rules. Well, if we don't get our hands around some of this, someone else is going to step in, whether it's the federal government or something else. And so let's get the focus somehow, some way back on our kids on the field, because they're doing just phenomenal things.
And that's a great balance that you have to strike. I'm sure you want to enhance football programs and exploit them to the greatest without making them the be-all and end-all and overlooking the more important things.
Well, that's the challenge we grapple with in this collegiate model, I guess is what we call it. It's not amateur and pro anymore, it's a collegiate model. Because, yeah, they are student athletes. They're not employees. By the same token, there's a huge economic component that's playing a role and is probably changing some values or changing some decisions that are being made and forcing us to evaluate our values. I'm not a proponent at all of paying student athletes. That's not what we do. There's professionals for that. Yet we're tiptoeing up to that line in some way or fashion. We're going to need to continue to grapple with that. But we do have an obligation to our student athletes and a lot of spectrums. We need to bring in kids who have an opportunity to be successful academically at the school. We need to bring in kids who have an opportunity to be successful socially, as well as kids who have an opportunity to come in and be successful from an athletic point of view. Sometimes we do a good job of that, sometimes we don't.
Sounds like this is a conversation and dialogue that conferences throughout the country need to have with their leadership.
I think everyone's doing a little soul searching right now. You know, I came out of a president's meeting not too many months ago, and we spent a lot of time talking about what are our values, and do our actions reflect our values, and they put a lot of pressure on me to ensure that those things do occur, and they look at me to give them guidance back. You know, are we doing the right things? Do we have the right mechanisms in place? What's the path we're going? And that's an ongoing discussion. It's a dynamic environment we're in, and it's certainly a fascinating world to work in, and I'm sure it's a fascinating world to compete in.
Absolutely. Well, best of luck to you, John.
Thank you
Good
so
to
much
see
for
you.
being here.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
you.